We have Paul from Newport, and he's going to be our first Dork talk today. And he's got some kits, some stuff to play with as well, which is always
yeah, you can have a go after. We'd also need a volunteer for the webcam, someone with a steady hand. It's normally on a stand, but we'll let you sort of play with it.
And so we'll have like maybe 2 or 3 talks now, a bit of a break, and then we'll...
Yeah, I think we do two or something.
Yeah, feel free to interrupt if you wish as well.
Okay.
Computer just went to sleep now.
Yeah, we're back. Exactly that. Just say if you spot anything, because it's on sort of sleep time again.
Thanks.
Yeah, my name's is that okay? Yeah, my name's Paul Woodford. I'm actually from the University of Newport. Just finished a Masters in Design, and our tutor Brigitte has tried to get about half a dozen of us to be here tonight. She's going to bring the rest in about a week or a fortnight, I think. There's someone playing with LEDs and thermal and sort of heart monitor sort of inputs and to drive flowers. There's somebody who's doing wearable technology with dresses. Absolutely fantastic designer. And a couple of people playing with mandala patterns with Wii technology. So there's all sorts of weird stuff. I'll explain my stuff very briefly. I call this navagio, which is shipwreck. The idea came from standing in the sea in Kefalonia, and when you're in the shallows you see the light playing on the waves, and it does all sorts of weird patterns. So what you see on the screen, there are going to be weird patterns, but that's not the complete story, that's just the end result. So that was the original idea, and she's given us like a year to come up with something a bit better than that. And so we started doing some research with artists, and there are a number of people who are in Radel. I don't know if you know any of these sort of like design artists at all. Jennifer Steinkamp, and they do a lot of sort of interactive installations, which means that people stand in front of the installation and take part in it. And it's based on some pretty weird philosophy of people like Merleau-Ponty, Heidegger, where the subject, when you're standing in front of a screen, suddenly becomes the object. It's a bit strange. It's very difficult stuff to understand as well. So what I try to do, I've got this screen there, and when I'm playing with these sort of like weird handlebars, I actually do something. I've got like a chain of things I'm going to show you in a moment, and things happen on the screen, and to all intents and purposes you think you're actually like making things sort of appear on the screen. But at some point you become so immersed in what you're doing that it works the other way around. It actually drives you, you learn what you're doing, and suddenly you sort of feel as though the screen is telling you what to do. So what I did, I started off with a Manfrotto ball joint from a tripod. You know the old sort of cameras? And that gave me a kind of 360 degrees movement to play with initially. And what we did, we stuck, this is the electronics now, an accelerometer, the sort of things you get on a phone. And it gives you like an X and Y axis, so you can actually tilt the thing. So that tilt mechanism gave me an idea for like, perhaps I could wear this on my arm. So I could do this sort of thing, and whatever I was doing with my arm would end up sort of creating patterns on the screen. So I moved away from the wearable technology when I found that tripod thing, and I started off then saying to people, have you got a piece of wood or something that we could put on it, so we could actually sort of move it, so you could have like sort of haptic technology, touch technology. And we moved from there to finding a scooter in the garden, a Captain Scarlet scooter, and actually screwing that on top of this board. Well, of course, all this takes about 2 or 3 months. Once you've got that initial idea, like a kind of a prototype in mind, you can go off on tangents. You can start playing with other concepts. So the next thing we decided to do was, okay, so we've got something that could drive something. The accelerometer is tilting. We need it to actually do something. It's no good just having like maybe a dish where you just have some flashy images. We need some sort of a chain, something interesting happening. So what we did then, we took vibration motors. They're also in phones, and little tiny things. That wasn't my phone.
No.
And the vibration motors are quite useful because they're so small you can attach them to anything. I would like to actually extend this at some point and create a huge tank with lots of big motors, you know. I think that'll be much more fun. But people say they have quite a lot of fun when they're holding that dish and it starts vibrating in their hands and stuff. So what we did, we created this chain of events. We've got an accelerometer which can tilt things. We programmed some Arduino code into the Mac and started playing with it. And we managed to get readings from an accelerometer, and by this time they were like handlebar readings. So it didn't take us very long to get the code working. It's a very simple code. There's plenty of code as well out there in Arduino land on the internet, which you can nick and play with, because people are very friendly with their codes. And we got these vibration motors sort of responding to the input from the handlebars. And the next thing I thought I'd do is get the water, the idea from Catalonia, standing in the sea. So it took us ages to find these plastic dishes which were like, didn't have any stamps on the bottom, like made in England or made in China or something like that, because it interferes totally with the pattern. Eventually we found something. It didn't take very long, about 2 or 3 months wandering around sort of junk shops and things. And we thought, well, okay, so we got the water shaking in the dish. We need that now to become an image somewhere else. And all of this stuff would be concealed from somebody who's actually driving the handlebars. All they would see is the screen and have the handlebars in front of them. Of course, I've exposed all this to you tonight, so you haven't got any secrets. The vibration motors, once they've kicked in, they make the water agitate, and you've got a wave pattern. So what we needed then was a webcam suspended above it to actually project the images onto the screen. So that's the chain. The only thing is that you have to learn to operate the handlebars to see what happens. And until you actually touch it, you don't know how you get the image up there at all. So the concept was for us, from point of view of philosophy, that we had to try and engage the participant in such a way that they learn to master a controller. It's all a bit weird. And that goes back as well to the first project I made the previous year, which was these, like a football goalpost thing. And the participant had to score a goal by kicking through a laser beam. And when they kicked and scored, all the LEDs lit up on the posts, and all these Liverpool drunken fans started singing as well, so we had lights and audio kicking on. Now that was all about invisible football. This is all about not seeing what you're doing as well. So the two projects I've made have had invisibility at the core. So philosophically, Brigitte, my tutor, got very excited about this because she said, I think what you've got here is an interesting concept, all about the material and the immaterial. And I went, really? And I said, tell me about it. So at some point I didn't realise she was an expert on cognitive feedback theory, which means that consciousness, our sort of understanding the way we think and react to things, is at the core of everything she does. And suddenly I realised what she meant was that I'm thinking I'm creating an image by doing this. There's the vibrator going off. And so I think I'm actually doing that. But once you've actually got the 4 vibrators working at the same time, and you get immersed in it, and you're on it for quite a long time, it actually takes over you. And you get this kind of a loop idea kicking in. So that's the basic sort of background to it. So what I thought I'd try and do now is get somebody to hold the actual webcam and show you what I can do. Because that's the exciting bit, really. So has anybody got a steady hand? Do you think you can do that?
Pretty steady.
Go on, so what we're going to do, we're going to suspend the webcam above this dish of water. And initially, I'm going to operate the handlebars just for you to see what happens. And hopefully, we'll get quite an attractive image come up on the screen as a result of the vibration motors kicking in. Right, so if you, I've got it like that. So if you can get it so the LEDs, the circles, you drop it right down now. Keep going.
Yeah,
keep going.
yeah.
You keep going. Look in there. Okay, a bit to the one side. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. See those 6 LEDs there? They're the lights on the webcam. When you actually, normally the hand wouldn't be there at all. Of course, he is shaking a bit. Once you start operating this, there it goes. You get lovely patterns.
Yeah, it's vibrating off the table. Great second hand. There we go. Is that alright? Yeah.
Any vibration on there?
We lost it. It's vibrating.
It's going. Can't hear it.
It's sort of dancing its way to the table.
Yeah,
it's definitely
so, anyway, the idea is with the giant screen, you could be playing with that. What's happened since we set up the examiner is 2 of the motors have actually failed. They've actually pulled out, so we've only got 2 of them working this evening. But it's enough for you to be able to see what happens. It's not particularly spectacular. In fact, if you wanted to lift that up and shake it about a minute, you can create a better image than what I can by putting it with the webcam. But it gives you the idea of what you can do with the actual sort of device. Now, what's interesting about this handlebar thing is that when it's on a plinth quite high like that, is that people feel like they're actually riding around in space or something. They give you some pretty weird comments about the way they feel about things. And the interesting thing about doing an art installation or response installation like this is that if you actually set up questionnaires and talk to people, their responses and what they say about it is fascinating as the actual thing you set up yourself. We'll come back now. Here we go. Thanks for doing that. Let's see if I can just get that.
Vibrating in one direction, but it is, isn't it? That one, yeah.
It'd be nice for people to have a go, I think.
Yeah. Do you feel any vibration in the handlebars?
No, not a thing. But the interesting thing, if you set it up in an exhibition space where you've got some wooden floors, people say they actually like the vibration sort of like feeling, the aesthetics of that. The idea is that they don't see any of the mechanics at all. They just see the screen and actually have the input. I wasn't going to bring this stuff down because I wasn't sure it was going to work, but I'm glad it sort of like has done something because it's easier to explain it. That's basically it.
So would you have the little container in the plinth, or?
You could do, you could put, you can actually set
To be hidden.
everything to be concealed in the plinth if you wanted, but the best thing would be to have that in a separate room perhaps. I mean, there's no way you'd have cables and arduino boards and things like that exposed to the public. And we've already created a chipset that will bootload this if it wanted to go into a larger installation space, you know, which is ideal because then you turn the power off in the night, go home, you don't have to worry about computers and things. The actual chip would be programmed with the arduino code in it. There's one final thing, I'm running that through processing, which is another brilliant program which a lot of people like to use. But the filters that come with it are fantastic. I would like to have like a pixelated version of that. There are 4 in processing, which are just great filters just to show this straight off. But that one's quite nice because the LEDs on the webcam are visible constantly. Does anybody want to have a go? You know, see if it'll vibrate. Come on, have a go. Yeah, just come on, go ahead because I don't know why you move that.
Can we move it in a bit?
Yeah.
Because if it's
One on this side. If I try and get the other, see if we can get. Oh, you've got it. You've got it.
Oh,
You've
there,
picked it.
there you
But
go.
it's much more fun if you've got the 4 motors working at the same time than just the 2. You like that?
Yeah, I do.
Now I'm interested in potential applications for this. Yeah, but
I enjoy
yeah.
it too much.
Yeah.
Oh, anyone else want to have a go?
Does anybody else want to do it?
Oh, go.
Yeah, go on. You do it. Fine. It's a shame that the motors are falling out. Who wants to go?
yeah.
Anyway you like, you find out. There it goes. Can you see it? You feel it?
Oh, feel it. Well,
You can see, you can actually see it, can you?
yeah.
The potential applications, the first thought was, you know, dance, and it looks like a bit like a weird sort of dance music video. But then I thought about the work that Wendy Keebright, yes, yeah, who work for autistic children,
Yeah, therapy.
like and sound
Yeah.
and image,
Yeah.
and you know, an action provoking some sort of cool light and sound
Yeah.
response.
Well, it is a response installation, and I mean, I love music as well. I think I've got a MIDI controller of some kind, or sample controller.
Does anyone else?
Maybe that's going to go.
Have you tried it with sound yet, or?
I haven't tried this one with sound. The last installation I did, they had with sound. it's quite easy to set this up and trigger some samples and some loops.
So with the processing.
Yeah, yeah.
And have you tried it with some sort of glove, or you mentioned
I haven't.
something on your arm?
I haven't tried the accelerometer with wearable technology at all. I've just done it with this particular device.
Okay, but
It's so easy to do with a lily pad or something, you know. Problem is these vibration motors come with tiny cables,
yeah.
and they're terrible for soldering. I spent an entire Friday morning once just soldering these tiny things, and it was so frustrating because how many of you actually solder? It's quite a few who probably solder. You get the shake after a while, you know, it's this tiny thing, and you just get the thing going like that, and you dab it, and it goes on, and you think, yes, and it goes back on again. And the vibration motors are the worst thing. And what's happened there, my colleague Miles, he's really good with arduino stuff, he's done the one cable there, and that's the one that's just popped out. So I'm quite pleased it's not me. So he's really brilliant with that stuff. Has anybody got any other questions?
Have you tried making it so, say the vibrating is under a little platform that you stand on, so you can interact with the
when I did it for the
subject?
exam, and I actually built a little stand. I picked up this thing which was quite cheap, and it was quite easy with a glue gun to fix the thing, you know, quite solidly to the base of something. Because with that table shaking, I mean, the table's making the patterns move, you know, the floor's making the patterns move. Someone holding the camera, so the camera's got to be completely static and in place, so that you don't get any vibrations except off the motor. That's why I like to have a huge tank. I've seen some people, I think in France, they did Senocosme, something like that. Senocosme, is it? Senocosme? They've got these huge sort of basins, and they get people to interact by putting their hands on sort of like ferric liquid or something like that, and all these sort of weird patterns come on. If you have a look on the net, I mean, you think when you've got the idea, no one's done this, until you start looking, and there's hundreds of people, thousands doing art installations with like liquid waveforms. I think CERN, where they've got the collider, they've even got like an art type thing on the website for people to create things, and because of the Einstein physics going all sort of a little bit squiffy. That's it, yeah.
But, I was wondering if you thought about linking it rather to the vibrator, maybe some kind of, you know, subsonic thing that would vibrate.
Anything. The great thing about that chain is that you can substitute any one component for another component, and that's the brilliant thing about this.
So in fact, you could do it with just sound as well.
Yeah,
so
you could,
sound
exactly. That's exactly it. And what we've found, all of us as students, is that we've got these similar core ideas, and we've just gone off on one.
Yeah.
For instance, Amy has got this thing with kind of like thermal stuff she's doing with fingers, and also the heart rate. It's dead easy to set up. Although, again, she's frustrated by the thing falling apart, you know, on the moment of truth. But, and Kay's doing a lot of like wearable stuff. She's a brilliant fashion designer, she's got these lovely dresses. And the other two foreign students were doing stuff with like hacking into Wii technology and things, you know, with the Kinects. And they had these lovely, the one display she'll show you in a couple of weeks, where as you put your finger on the screen, the fish follow your finger in a pond. It'll actually attract to the movement. You've got these motion sensors working. So these components can be substituted quite easily by almost anything. I think the great thing about tinkering, you know, having groups like this, is that you can do anything with it. You know, you can sort of you can collaborate as well. What I enjoyed about the course was that it was multidisciplinary. A lot of people say they use that a lot. It's bandied about, and people think it's a little bit. This really is good stuff.
Is it a design course?
It's design, but she says it's where art meets science. And it's true.
How many students are there?
I think this year there were about a half of a dozen, about 10 started, but the photography element finished, so we lost a few simply by default. But I think they've all completed now. Any other questions? Fantastic. As I said, I'd love to turn that into some sort of audio thing, because that's my sort of passion.
One first thing you think of is to bring some audio.
Definitely.
Need a thing in it.
Okay, I'll dismantle that very quickly if you like, and you can have another speaker and something else. Any others? Sorry.
Yeah, where are you going to display this stand soon?
I've not put in an installation. We were supposed to have an exhibition in Bristol, and that would have been really interesting because we could have put the chipset in and had it for a couple of days. That's collapsed. It's very difficult for it to organise like a university type thing.
Where was that going to be?
It was going to be
Pervasive media.
it wasn't going to be the Arnold Theatre. I was trying to think. No, I lost the name in my mind where they were going to do that. I just can't think off the top of my head.
Okay.
But it's done with the waterfront where all the others are.
Oh,
Yeah.
in the watershed then maybe.
Yeah, a bit down. I just can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. And that simply collapsed through the logistics of it and the timing. You know, they had other bookings, and that was a shame. It would be really nice to see this on the grand scale. You know.
I think it would be really worth contacting Wendy Keeper to see about working with autistic children. Because I mean, just the reaction is fantastic.
Yeah, I quite like the way the response and the output.
They'll say what they learn and how it
Yeah.
develops. And,
Yeah.
she's one of the key researchers.
Yeah, which was quite strange at the end of our first year, and that was quite well attended. But that was on site. The difficulty is that the University of Newport with the River is not geared up for art stuff. They've got good stuff for film and for media, which is what I actually teach. But they haven't got anything for in terms of art workshops on the new campus. So they have to clear a room, you know, which is quite a lot of fuss. I quite like my football, and the only thing is with that, I wanted, as someone shot, the LEDs to light up with the velocity, but my soldering was so bad that the LEDs were like fading, so I had to change the code the night before and just make sure that when he scored the goal, the LEDs came on and the sounds came on as well, the football cheering. That's quite nice because people had to learn how to score, because they had to do it in a particular way to hit the laser beam. So.
Cool.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks very much.
Let's go.
Okay.